All right. Hello and welcome back to another episode. This is actually the official episode 3 of Talking Movement. Today's guest is, he does a bit of everything. He's a super physio, he's a super long distance runner, ultra runner, and I know he's just generally a really, really good guy. It is James Cruickshank, PhysioRun from Spear Physiotherapy. I knew James way back when he was back at Banks of D. This is about, again, 6 years ago or so. And yeah, he's niched into the runners, which we've got a few of you guys here, and you all know the old ball and chain. She's a runner. So we speak about all things A to Z of basically running, but long distance running or getting started in running. Some injuries, some of the causes, some of the recovery strategies of running. We go back and forth on different quotes of different books and analogies. We're very, very much of a similar type mindset and very similar in our learning capabilities. So it was really, really, really good chat. It is a long one. You might want to break it up. It is a long one. We chat for a good while, so much so that Zoom cut us off. Twice it cut us off. So the laptop was having a bit of a meltdown, but we got there in the end, and we've got some really great information with James from PhysioRun. You'll find all his details at the end of the podcast. Also, everything will be linked below. Any of the books that we mentioned should also be linked below. And yeah, enjoy and let me know what you think of episode 3. Hello, James. Welcome to the Talking Movement podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks very much for inviting me on. It's actually hearing some lovely stuff about a lot of your clients and a lot of the people you work with, and it's quite interesting to be asked on and get to touch with your mind as much as you get to ask me questions. So it's great. I'm looking forward to it.
It's all lies. They're lying to you. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. All right. I read recently a very, very interesting email that you put out called the A to Z of marathon running. Now, with it being the nicer weather coming in, and of course it being the ever elusive marathon season, I thought we would unpack it for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah?
So, before we start, just give us a quick who you are, where you are, what you're from, blah, blah, blah.
Pretty simple. My name is James. I'm a physio and I like to run, and I've got a tag handle called PhysioRun. So it kind of puts both of my passions together. Yeah. I'm trying to be the best physio I can be. I can never plateau in that, and I'm trying to be the best runner I can be, and I can never plateau at that. So it's pretty simple. Yeah. Put my two passions together, and here we have PhysioRun. So yeah, that's me.
A lot of people might actually know you as well from Unlace the Brace.
Ah, yeah.
Which
yeah.
I've done it personally.
Wow, good job. Yeah.
I really want to have a long conversation with you about toe yoga, but we'll leave that for another podcast because that freaks me out so much.
Like, see when people say, like, they email you, like I get emails quite a lot of time about injuries, and they say, oh, I've got a really sore foot, and you're like, oh, I love feet, and they're like, right, okay, I don't need to email you back now. I've heard enough. And you're like, no, wait, hear me out.
That client just ghosted me again. I don't know why.
Yeah. But no, it's definitely, I can't say it's a passion, but it's something I'm really interested in. It's something that came off the back of just trying to be better at physio and try to be better at running and trying to help pretty much every client interacts with the ground, and how can we improve that interaction with the ground is so important. So it came off the back of that, and I would probably say if I was to write the whole program again, I'd probably have about maybe 50% of it kept the same, and I'd probably change 50% of it. So my learning's always developing, and it's always quite cool to kind of push your bias and thoughts on.
So what you're saying is we might have an Unlace the Brace part 2.
2.0.
2.0 coming soon, exclusive. Yeah. All right, let's dive into this A to Z. Now, A, first off, is accountability. Break it down for me.
I think with my job as a physio, a lot of people try and be accountable to me as a physio. I don't want that. I want them to be accountable to themselves, and long after they've stopped seeing me, I still want them to be accountable to themselves for their goal or for their challenge or for their passion. But also sometimes accountability can be like if you're struggling to get out the door or get motivated, sometimes motivation will come and go. Discipline stays. And sometimes being disciplined with somebody else to kind of spur you on a little bit gives you that little bit of accountability. Accountability is a good tool when you're going through days that you're just maybe feeling that you don't really want to get out the door or do anything. I talk a lot about the rule of thirds. A third of the time you're going to want to do it. A third of the time you're going to feel that's not too bad, and a third time you're not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
It's try to get that third when you don't want to do it, have something that you're accountable to. So yeah, that would be my kind of take on accountability.
So what are you talking about here? Are we talking building solid foundations and habits, or getting like an accountability buddy, or getting a group?
It probably varies for different people. I think having accountability to habits, if you talk about, I think it's James Clear, the Atomic Habits, and that's basically what everything's built upon, is getting into routine. Yeah. It's getting into consistency, getting into repeating the same thing over and over again, and then making maybe small tweaks or adding an extra layer onto it. It's the wall is built layer by layer or brick by brick, layer by layer. It's not just a wall. You don't get a wall by just turning up for one session. You get the wall after doing multiple sessions. And I think sometimes as well, if you have a goal, sometimes a goal is great, but when the marathon comes and goes,
what happens then?
What's your goal after that? What's your passion after that? And I think that having habits and consistency brings you out of that little slump you have after the marathon and onto the next kind of peak or the next goal that you have. So accountability can mean a few things, different things, sorry. And whatever you need, have that word. It's just a word at the end of the day. Pretty much with all the A to Z, they're just words, but how do you use that tool to better yourself and to better your journey on fitness and ultimately healthy living?
Yeah, I love that analogy about the brick by brick, and you can even expand on that analogy. And before you even get to putting bricks down, you've got to lay foundations.
The foundations are the bit that nobody sees. You're doing that in the background, nobody's watching. And like, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention things, but Ben Kilner, he always said when the Olympics came, that's when the shadows go away, and that's when the spotlight's on them for maybe about 2-3 weeks, and then all of a sudden the shadows come again, and they work so hard, and then they come back out, and everyone just thinks that they've landed at the top of the tree.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they've not. They've worked so hard to get there, and they've put that foundations in. They've planted their roots. They've grown. They've developed, and then all of a sudden, people think, "Well, I can do that." It's like, well, you can, but you've got to dedicate time to it.
Yeah,
you've got to start with foundations.
The famous Usain Bolt quote: "I trained for 4 years to run 9 seconds."
Yeah, absolutely. It's the work that gets put in day to day that allows you to enjoy the moment. And I think that the marathon is nothing merely than a lap of honor for your training that's went before it. It's 16 weeks of training for a lap of honor. And that's when you turn up on the lap of honor and you put the hard work in, you'll enjoy it and you'll probably get a good result if you're outcome based. But even just having that 16, 18 weeks or 6 months, 8 months behind you, that's where the real benefit's been. That's where you've really made your achievement.
It's the journey as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which brings me perfectly into the letter B, base mileage. So in order to get base mileage in, you obviously have to enjoy part of the process and enjoy the journey. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I would maybe challenge enjoy. We all like eating from clean plates, but we don't like doing the dishes. If you want the results, you've got to maybe do some of the hard work in the background. And you go back to the rule of thirds. You're going to enjoy a third of your runs. You're probably going to find meh for a third, and you're probably going to hate a third of your runs, but you still get them done. Tick them off and move on to the next one, because the next one's going to get better. And I think base miles is important. If you want to swim fast, you swim. If you want to run fast, you run. If you want to golf well, you practice golfing. So it is sports specific. And I think the base miles is a good way of getting, from a scientific point of view, load through your bones to accept the stress and strains that marathon training puts through you. That's probably where base miles are really, really important to come in, is doing a low level volume consistently and gradually building that up, because the bones, the joints, the muscles, the tendons all love to be under load, but they have to be gradually increased to increase their capacity over a period of time. And base miles will get bigger throughout the training plan, and that's a sign that your body needs to develop to allow it to adapt to the loads that the marathon is going to put it under.
Yeah. And to pair very, very nicely with the letter B is the letter C, which is cross training. So running's going to get you good at running, obviously, but we have to take into account a lot of other factors.
Yeah. I think cross training is really good because sometimes you can not just from a change, which is great in the first place, but it's a change of load, it's a change of stress, it's a change of
Stimulus.
thought process for the brain. There's a little bit of research that shows that after 100 repetitions of say for example, if you take 100 steps, the brain stops thinking about remodeling the bone until you stop for 4 hours. So effectively, you're going out for a run and your cadence is 180. That means after 2 minutes, the body's bored. It's switched off from what you're doing. So you kind of have to keep on stimulating that. That's why pace changes, incline changes, little bits of difference can make a big difference in the loading. But also cross trainer, rower, stepper, workouts, WODs, things like that can be a great way of just changing the stimulation to A, the body, the mind, and B, the body, the actual physical side of things as well.
And I guess the overall concept, I mean, the overarching concept with any fitness, anything, running, cycling, workouts, is to increase work capacity over time. The greater work capacity you got, the healthier and more longevity you're going to have going on forwards.
The more you do something, the better your body gets and more efficient the body gets at doing that. So therefore, if you're running that level, it's going to take less work to keep at that level. So therefore, you can effectively go for longer. So that's kind of what you're wanting to do. And a lot of people will run their base mileage really, really quick. So you're actually running at a heart rate that the body's going to have to recover from, rather than just allowing it to maintain what you're recovering from previously. So yeah, that's where cross training comes in quite nicely, because you can actually stimulate different areas of the muscle itself or different parts of the body. And that's where I'd probably say that the gym work comes in really, really helpful as well from a cross training point of view.
Definitely. And obviously all this training means you got to eat some food, right? So brings us into D, which is the diet aspect of this. Now, I could talk nutrition until your ears fall off, so we'll try and keep it really short, because I'll end up talking about high density lipoproteins or something, and it'll be 20 minutes of me trying to explain what cholesterol is. So give me your approach to diet. Obviously, it's going to be healthy, it's going to be balanced, I'm assuming.
I think from my point of view, for my clients, I would signpost them for dietary information rather than myself give out dietary information. It's above my pay grade. It's above my level of expertise. It's not what I'm trained in. I've not had any like formal training in diet. But what I've done really quite nicely is I've worked with a couple of local Meryl Cooper. I don't know, she's in Bangkok as well. She's got like coaching business as well, nutrition side of things. So there's a few people out there. Claire Dunn as well. I've done a wee bit of work with her, and also there's many people I take a lot of advice from, but I am quite strong in signposting people to somewhere else. It's just not my forte in the end of the day. But for me, and we were speaking just before we came on, my diet is probably not something I would write home about, but at the same time, it's specific to me. It gives me the energy I need.
Yeah.
90 grams of, I think it's 90 grams of carb per hour when I'm running, fluid to thirst, jelly babies, and sometimes you get these little boiled potatoes that are in a little can, 19p, tin opener, salt, and away you go. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways. So the dietary side of things is seek an expert like yourself, Jason, and have that chat, go into the depths of carbs, protein, what's good for recovery, what's good for exercise. But if you come to myself, I'm probably going to lean on somebody else to give you that information.
That's, something, as a fellow professional in the fitness industry, that's very, very admirable. And you don't just take it on and think, I can do that. And it's like I always say, if you come to me wanting to be a bodybuilder, I can't help you.
I think we're always trying to do the best for our clients. And if a client's got a goal that I'm not the best at helping, I'm going to push them to somebody that is. For example, if a golfer came to see me, we've got Karen Young in our clinic who used to work in the Scottish Golf they're getting just popped onto her list.
Yeah.
Likewise, if she's got a runner who she's having a little bit of a tricky time with, we chat about it. And we've also got a physio that benefits in Pilates, swimming, all sorts. And you kind of have a little niche or an interest in I think how do we best serve our client is by letting somebody else do the work if they're a better place for them to do it. It's also, I saw some that you posted the other day as well, and it doesn't matter who gets people better. It doesn't matter. Like, the ego should never be part of it. I always remember a book, it's about storytelling. Us in private health or in healthcare or anyone that you've sought out to help is Timon and Pumbaa, but you're Simba. The client is Simba, so we're only there to support. It's never about, we're not the star of the show. No. We're not going to be the one at the end of the show that's got the halo around about them. It's got to be down to the client is always Simba. And I think that's the important thing is if somebody else can guide you on your journey, my job is maybe to direct you there. And that's probably how I can best fit for your journey.
We're the Sherpas of your fitness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're the Sherpas just showing you and pointing you. Yeah,
eventually. I think Timon and Pumbaa is a wee bit more glamorous than Donkey or Sherpa, but we're that. We carry the goods. We'll help you out. We're sat navs. That's all we are. Sat navs, but they're the driver.
Yeah. All right, moving on from that then.
E. I'm guessing E.
Yeah. Endurance.
Yeah.
Again, this is if you want to run ultra marathons and you've come to me, I'm going to pass you on because I have no idea where we start, how you begin. So talk a little bit endurance to me. What does marathon training require? Obviously endurance, but how and why?
I think endurance can kind of mean a couple of things. Endurance is sometimes you have to endure. And I think with the marathon, if you speak to anyone that's ran a marathon, they'll say, oh, halfway is 20 miles, and then you've just got to endure. And I think sometimes knowing that it's going to get quite tough along the way, but anything.
Inevitable wall, is that what that is? Then you got.
Yeah, I think what the wall they're kind of, I think what people get is when they kind of run out of carb, and that's when they've got to slow down because they're changing over to like the fat synthesis or the fat as a fuel source, and you can't actually work as hard.
Yeah,
I do think as well if you fuel well, you never hit the wall. So is it an error as humans make, and it's been glorified? The same with the hill and the ball model. People talk about the hill and ball model, but once you're over it, you're like, oh, that's actually not too bad. I think my take on endurance is the same with anything. You're going to go through good times and bad times in the gym, in the road, on track. The good times you can enjoy, and it doesn't feel like it's a task. On the bad days or the tough days, you've just got to endure it and kind of just get through it. As long as you're not putting yourself into pain or discomfort or injury, you just have to kind of endure what's going on there. And I think these sessions are the ones, they're like cookies you put in a little mental cookie jar that when you're actually out in the race, you think, oh, I remember that session when I smashed it. I didn't really want to do it, but I did it anyway. Mental cookie. And it's like, I've done this before. I'm actually quite strong. You can't, it's the same with anything. You can't just be mentally strong. You've got to expose yourself to challenges and overcome the challenges or fail at challenges and then have another strategy, then come back and say, actually, I can do this the different way. Or maybe you fall 7 times and you get up 8, but it's getting up that 8th time. It's the mental cookie in the cookie jar. So endurance can be physically, but endurance can also be psychologically enduring the task that you're doing as well.
It's also almost like you're learning to persevere in the face of failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like,
the thing that people say is average is popular because everyone can do it. Being good takes that a little bit extra. And that's where sometimes if you do fail the first time, that's just an opportunity to learn and do it in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, and I watch my 2-year-old fail all the time, spill things, and he holds a cup a wee bit harder. Or my 4-year-old fell off the climbing bars the other day. He's going to hold on tighter the next time. So you learn through failure, and it's something that people fear. They feel failure. I think it's probably one of the best learning opportunities you get.
Yeah. You also stop at that first hurdle. It's only failure when you stop.
Yeah.
You didn't learn from it and try again and put those new learnings into process, then you fail.
Put it this way, if somebody's driving home and they were driving home and they get to a red light and they get out of the car, park the car and say, that's it, I'm not driving ever again. Well, no, they wait for the green light to come, then they go again. And next time they come to a red light, they're like, I know this is going to pass. So this too shall pass. The green light comes and they carry on their journey. All failure is a little red light. Yeah. You learn from it, turns to amber, and then before you know it, I know how to do it now. You carry on. So it's a step on the journey more than anything else.
Yeah, and at the risk of just going back and forth with famous quotes and different sayings, the Michael Jordan one, you know, that I missed 9,000 shots in my career, and I failed over and over and over again. That's why I succeed, and that's Michael Jordan. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the greatest basketball player of all time, I guess. But again, another debate for another day. Let's talk about something I know you're really, really passionate about, and I know we can get really into the intricacies, which is form. This is the F part. Now, you mentioned earlier a lot, like you love feet, but we won't go any further. We'll just leave it there. Let's talk about form, proper running form. I take it, does this is obviously the biomechanical motion of you in locomotion, but also does form come into what trainers you wear, what socks you have on? Does that affect form?
I guess with form, there's many types, there's many ways, there's no necessarily a right way. There's maybe a more efficient way,
Yeah.
but there's not necessarily right or wrong. It's the same with probably your weightlifting. You can be really, really pernickety about the inch of how things are meant to look.
Yeah.
But what happens if you're lifting a heavy, heavy weight and you slightly go outside that comfort zone? You've still got to lift it. So you've got to have like a
Bandwidth.
buffer zone. So sometimes it might not look great, but you're building strength in that position. The efficient way of running, if you land on the forefoot, you tend to recruit the quadricep and the calves more. If you run on the midfoot, you tend to recruit the quads, the calves, the hamstrings, and the glutes as a four. And if you land on the heel, you tend to be more hamstring glute dominant. And it's the same with pretty much if you were to do the same drills in the gym, but put emphasis on the heels, you get an engagement of the hamstrings and glute. If you go more midfoot, you get all four. If you go into the toes and have a floating heel, you're probably going to be working quads and calves to a certain degree. So it's the same with running. What we'd probably say is that if you're running and you're having like a knee injury from like a quad, either failing or being too short or whatever terminology the client comes in with, you can kind of adjust how they run. It's like having a fixed bike. If you've only got one gear, as soon as you come into a bit of problem or a hill, you don't have anywhere else to go. So it's given the client options that if you're going uphill, you're going to be more forefoot. If you're getting sore knees going uphill, try and lift your body back so you're actually landing more than midfoot. And same for going downhill as well. If you land on the heel and you're getting hamstring pain or hamstring discomfort, can you actually shorten your stride and land midfoot? It's there's a few different things with form. I'm not a firm believer that there's a one size fits all. Mm-hmm. If you were to watch London Marathon, you'll see thousands of different forms that people run and they're injury free. Sometimes you cause more harm. The butterfly effect. You change one thing because you think it's the form, you knock something else off. So it's being careful, and I think that form changes are based on injury preference rather than actually performance preference initially. From my eye as a physio, coaches will probably change form from a performance point of view, and that's something that they'll be able to teach and coach well. But from my point of view, it's more from an injury management. Going to the socks and going to the shoes. Yeah, I do think so. The shoes, especially, we're in a world where we've got these maximal super shoes now. The super shoes actually change the load that goes through the foot itself. So it's actually, as we hit the ground, we normally roll through the foot into pronation, then push off. But with the rocker plates in, you actually miss that pronation and go straight onto the toe. So you're actually using the big toe as a bit of a braking force. So you can see a lot of people get like metatarsal injury or toe injuries from the super shoes. Also, the wrong shoes on the wrong surface can cause injuries as well. So, for example, if you're going out for a trail run and you've got like the super shoes on, they're too unstable. They're like they're flying the uppers. There's no support. They've got massive cushioned heels, so you're actually running on a cloud on top of rough terrain. So you're just an ankle sprain waiting to happen. And likewise, if you're wearing a shoe that's not got the grips for the trail, you're not going to use the right muscles, or you're going to be really tensing the foot to grip, and that doesn't allow the foot to naturally flow. So you end up just knocking the load somewhere else up the chain. So I do think that footwear is maybe about 10% of it, but the body's probably the 90% of the injuries that we tend to see.
Yeah. So the risk of causing everybody, causing all their bank balances to get a bit lighter. Different shoes, different terrains, different days, different weathers, different.
Yeah, N+1
running, I guess. Like, do you have a fast running shoe, or do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. You probably would have a a 5K shoe. If you look at any sprinter, they wear like low profile shoes, even potentially spikes if they're on the track or if they're on cross country, but they have a low profile shoe for a 5K. 10K, you probably want a little bit of cushion in there, but anything up to half marathon to marathon, you're probably looking at your super shoes now. Then for ultra, you're looking for something that your foot's potentially going to be in that for 4 to 40 hours. So you kind of want something that's comfortable and also potentially changes to your foot as it swells and moves about. So the socks are really, really important too. And I think that we see a lot of injuries because when you're clawing with the ground, the sock gets pulled and it can give you the black nails from that point of view. So there's a few things that cause pinch points. As soon as you get a pinch point, the body's clever and it'll want to avoid it. So then you start to run with an abnormal
you run a bit
pattern of
funny.
compensating. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done 2 half marathons in my life. I think that's plenty for me. The first one was in Inverness, and everything went wrong. Like nipples bleeding, toes, all toenails gone, just everything. But I was of the mindset of any running shoe, any distance, any day.
Yeah.
Crack on.
I think
I also did it in a pair of, and I remember as well, I did it in a pair of ankle socks from Sports Direct. That's cotton, just like cheapy cotton shoes.
And what did you learn?
Yeah, buy proper socks and listen to the wife.
Yeah. That's a given though.
In, out. All right. We've already kind of briefed on goal setting. That's the G. So, it's, like you say, it's nice to have a goal, specific goals, realistic goals, but it's also nice to not have a goal.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I probably tend to use milestones rather than goals. So a goal tends to be like an end point, whereas a milestone tends to be like a tick off. And I think that works really nicely. Is like once you've done the marathon, what's the next kind of milestone after that? Is it to do another marathon quicker? Is it to do another marathon with a better recovery? Is it to do another process of the marathon? So it's kind of like before, and people say, "Oh, I'll think about that after the marathon." It's like, well, have a little think about it now. Write it down. You don't have to tell me, but then have that in the back of your head. So it's kind of like your marathon you're about to do is not your end point. Is going to be like a milestone in the right direction on the journey, because the train's not going to give up at every single station. It's got to carry on its journey. And I think that a good way of keeping people on board is by having a journey rather than a destination.
Yeah, it's something that's same, very, very similar for me is I don't do quote unquote transformations. My whole ethos is distant horizon, low trajectory.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I want to be doing, well, maybe not marathons, but I want to be able to be running or do handstands when I'm 90.
Yeah.
And that's a very long, drawn out process. It's not okay, I've done it now. That's it. I'll never do it again.
It's also like educating people to make educated decisions on everything they do. Like, don't restrict anyone, but if there's a better way of doing it, then they know, okay, I'm going to do it this way just this once, but I do know that there's a better way, or I know that sleep's important, but also meeting up with my friends tonight is going to be important too. So you're not going to throw the baby out of the bathwater just by having one bad night. It's a case of there is consistency and there is education, but it's knowing why you're making a decision rather than actually just being left with a choice, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. H. I had to go through the entire alphabet there just to get to H. So H is hydration. Now, we've spoke about this before. I'm what you call a biohacker. I love implementing little bits to optimize certain areas of my life. Things like sleeping, things like hydration, especially things like training, how I connect with others, how my mindset is. Like I make sure I'm always in growth mindset rather than fixed. But one of my key points is hydration. I don't drink coffee for at least 2 hours after I wake up. I make sure I hydrate, electrolytes, salt, magnesium. I take all this stuff in. But what does proper hydration mean in terms of optimal performance for running?
Again, I would probably bounce it to somebody that's far more educated in it than myself. But what I tend to be given the message of is drink to thirst rather than get a certain volume in.
Yeah.
In ultra running, you tend to, or I tend to look at fluids as a bonus. So I run with Tailwind, which has got your carb solution, your electrolytes, all your good things that you're going to probably lose during the run or things you need for your run.
Yeah.
And anything I take on through my fluid is a bonus, whereas I would try and replenish a lot of my carb with my food itself. I think caffeine can be a useful tool, but people have caffeine first thing in the morning because they feel tired, and then that becomes a habit. And then next thing you know is you depend on the caffeine because it is a low level addictive drug. So you tend to find there's an addiction there as well. But yeah, I mean, the hydration can be so many things for so many people. You often find as well that people tend to overhydrate rather than underhydrate. They'll
Yeah.
drink, I need to drink 2 liters of fluid a day. Well, if you ran a distance that made you sweat more than that, you maybe need to replenish that more. If you were in a cold environment and you're not sweating as much or you're not outside breathing, maybe you have to replace less, and it'll fluctuate. It's kind of like having the confidence to listen to your body and say, actually, what do I feel I need? Sometimes you'll crave hunger and it's thirst. So it's kind of like listening to the body and seeing, actually, if I drink a glass of water, am I still hungry? No, I'm not. Okay, it was thirst more than hunger itself. So there's hydration can mean a lot to everyone. I mean, it's not a boast at all, but I've ran a 33-mile run off of 500 milliliters of water or 500 meters of electrolyte. That's not to say the next time I ran it, I would need maybe more. So it's kind of like horses for courses, and drink to thirst rather than drink to a set number that you've got to have in every hour or so.
And like you say, every day, every session, every run will vary.
Yeah.
You got a lot of. I think this is why I'm a numbers kind of guy. I'm a data driven kind of geek, and I can control elements. I can control aspects in the gym. Like I control a lot of controllables, whereas I can't control weather, temperature, humidity, passing cars, different sort of fumes. I can't control any of that out there. I think that's why I just avoid it. That's at least I'm going to tell myself that anyway.
I think what's quite interesting is that you don't necessarily have to be in control of the method. You've got to be in control of the principles.
Yeah.
So, for example, I know that my body needs X amount on a hot day and it needs probably X amount on a cold day. It needs X amount on a day I've worked out a lot, and it needs X amount on a day that I've had rest. It needs X amount if I'm staying up late. It needs X amount if I'm going to bed. And then you've got the choice that what have I done today? Okay, I've worked out and there's also been quite hot, so I'm probably going to need to drink a little bit more. So it's kind of like the methods are the drinking, the principles are, well, how much do you actually need? And if you can control the principles, the methods take care of themselves. And I think that that's the same with pretty much anything. What is the point in going to the gym? The gym is to get strong principally. How do you do that? Well, the methods are many. There's a million different ways of getting strong in the gym. There's ways that you'll like, there's ways you don't like, there's ways that work slightly differently than others. The principle is you need to be robust. The principle of hydration is you need to be hydrated. Do you need to drink more on one day than the other? Well, if you're out the night before, you probably do need to drink more the next day. If you weren't out the night before, you probably don't need to drink as much the next day. It's the principle is listen to your body and give it what it needs.
Yeah.
The methods are many, so many to mention.
There's almost to simplify it, there's almost a common sense aspect to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Common sense is, yeah.
Far and few in between.
Well, you'd hope people have it, but once you actually question it, it's not there. And and sometimes it's education as well. It's like maybe making people sound like they know what they're talking about, and then actually say, well, what does that mean to you? Well, it means that if I'm out the night before, I'm going to have a drink the next day because I'm probably going to be dehydrated. Exactly. Yeah. And it's small things like that makes a difference. It's not so much I need to have 2 liters a day every single day. It's more like, well, if my circumstances have changed, I need to maybe increase or decrease my intake. And the same with like female athletes. For 2 weeks of the month, they're going to need less fluid than the other 2 weeks of the month. And it's being two males here, it's really hard for us to understand that from a feeling it point of view, but it's easy for us to read about it. But at the same time, it's a discussion you have with a female athlete where they've got to explore and see and what works for them, because we can give them information, but it's not proven by ourselves. It's not experience based. It's more educational based rather than experience, and they've got to kind of feedback what their experience with that is. And I think that's the same with with any bit we give out.
There's a lot of experimentation to it. A lot of
Same thing. Trial and
trying to
error.
see if it works. Try and see if it works.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Injury prevention. This is perfect for physio, right? It's your bread and butter, injury prevention and obviously injury management. So go on, give it to us.
I mean, it's tough because everybody's different. And I think injury prevention is different from one person to the next. And I think that the basic, again, we'll go back to principles and methods. The basic principle is don't do too much, too often, too soon, too far, too fast. The rule of twos. And normal injuries, about 80% of injuries or 85% of injuries are all due to one of that principles being out. You get the traumas, the unfortunate falls, snaps, and potentially that's too much load going through a joint, but in a traumatic point of view. So the key thing about injury prevention is having a really, really good, like, I guess, documentation of what you're doing, how quickly you're increasing things, somebody potentially writing a plan for you, potentially looking after your loading, your load management side of things. Injury management's kind of the same thing. When you get injured, we need to figure out what either the human error was or what the loading error was, and how do we rectify that going forward? How do we put a plan in place that the same thing doesn't really happen again? How do we try and eradicate the lightning strike that hits twice? So I think injury prevention, the more aware of the principles of loading you are, the less likely you are to injure. But as long as you're a human, you're probably going to injure yourself. The injury rates in a runner are, you can read in the literature, somewhere between 14% to 95%. So some journals quote 14% of runners got injured, some journals say 95%. I'd probably say it's closer to the 95, because we tend to find that on a day you're feeling great, you'll go in fifth gear and you'll burst it. Days you're feeling awful, you'll probably try and get the run done too quickly because I don't really feel it today, so I'll just get it done as quick as I can. So you tend to run too fast for what your body's used to. When you've had a heavy session before, you think I can do a second heavy session quite soon afterwards. Our age has a big effect on that as well. So our masters runners tend to have more tendon injuries, such as Achilles tendon or hamstring tendons, because they can't like adapt to the load as quick as what they were before. So, for example, the normal way in running is they have a session on Tuesday night, they have a session on Thursday night, and they'll do like a park run on a Saturday morning, they'll do a long run on Sunday.
Yeah.
The Tuesday to Thursday is not necessarily their breaking point, it's the fast one on Saturday because it's not recovered from the two that were before.
Yeah.
Our younger athletes can actually adapt quicker, so they can actually do the Tuesday, Thursday quicker than the Saturday. They tend to find it's more muscle strains that they get because their muscle hasn't fully adapted to the load that they're putting under it. So injury prevention, injury management, it's very much horses for courses. And if you can try and work out what the human error was for the injury, past injury, their health status as well, how much they look after themselves, you tend to find there's lots of things that can cause injury. And it's not just what they're doing from a running point of view. You can actually find, you speak to people about their training, like nothing has changed for the last 6 weeks. I've been doing the consistent work. It's like, well, what else has changed? Oh, actually, I'm moving house, or my partner's pregnant, or work stress and strains. COVID was a massive factor for us because we were allowed to train for 1 hour a day. People just went and kicked the arse off it for an hour. And then they were like doing an hour every single day because Boris said you must go outside every single day. So every single day people ran for an hour, where they were used to maybe running once or twice a week. They were then doing 7 times a week. And then they come in and saying, I've got like stress fractures, I've got like shin splints, I've got this, I've got that. And it's all loading injuries that you're getting because they do too fast, too soon, too often. The rule of twos.
It's filling up the stress bucket of the human body. It's just filling it up and then poking holes in it, really, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point, would it be fair to say that running isn't just a grab your shoes and out you go type thing? There's now a lot more science and a lot more literature behind it, where it's, okay, we've got to manage volume, we've got to manage load, we need a cumulative stress, we need to, how much can we recover before we move on, you know, the super compensation chart, where we need to be in that, obviously the it's Goldilocks, right? We need to do
Yeah.
not too much, but not too little. We need to be right here in that sweet zone.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually filming. I bought a potatoes tonight for the same analogy. The analogy was at number 4, the potatoes aren't going to cook. Put it up to number 10, filmed it again, and it's spilling over the cooker. And my wife's saying, "You turn it down." I was like, "No, I need to film it because this is part of the analogy. It's too much. You overcook them. You end up making a mess." So it's like Goldilocks is probably a cleaner way of saying it, safer as well for the missus. But
Or
I
if you want
think,
another way, James Clear does the ice cube equation.
yeah,
Ice cube
yeah.
in the room turns it up degree by degree.
Yeah. And it's the same with anything, though, like if you were to eat the exact same food every single day in a massive portion, there's going to be a change on your body. There's going to be a change on how your health is. There's going to be a change on how your body adapts to that. Um, the body's great at adapting, but it's gradual. And I think that as long as you're increasing your load gradually, as long as you're looking at I like your analogy about the low trajectory, far distance, that's what you've got to look at rather than high trajectory, close distance, because that is just going to end in problems. And I think that those who can do that, those who can't get injured, and it's understanding the why they've got injured. This shouldn't have happened to me because I do X, Y, and Z. Well, that's already a mistake. It can happen to anyone. So you've got to then backtrack and think, well, why did it happen to you? And it might be something that they come up with. Well, maybe it's because I've been busier at work. Maybe because I've had a lot more life stresses. Maybe it's because I've just been stupid in my training. I call it a recovery run, but I'm actually in a hurry to get back to pick the kids up from school, and I went a wee bit quicker than normal.
Yeah.
The body doesn't care. It doesn't care you've got kids to pick up from school. It's going to
Stress
break
is
if you put
stress.
under too much load. Yeah.
Stress is
Yeah.
stress. Which brings it's kind of a really nice segue into, you know, the injury prevention, into joint care and just joints in general. Now, over the last 8 weeks, I've suffered with a bit of a dodgy hip. I did a really bad, awkward landing in a snatch, and it knocked me. But the injury healed. Like most injuries tend to heal, unless you're very unlucky. Most injuries tend to heal, but for me, injury is there's a lot of mental aspects to an injury, especially when it comes to joints. Now, I like looking at joints. I like the science of joints, but I hate having to like work around specific joints because they are complex. What's your experience on taking care of them, or just in general? What's your experience with joints in your running?
Not necessarily running, but in my clients of that I work with, there's the thought process or the principle is joints act, muscles react. If the joint's not acting right, the muscles aren't going to work right.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure the joint is working as well as you can. So people come and say, I've got a really, really stiff joint. Okay, well, the joint has got to move better than that before we actually load it, before we actually move through range, because you're then going to use a compensatory pattern. There's a lot of muscles around about a joint, but the muscles don't know what to do until the joint goes there.
Yeah.
So, for example, in running, people that get a sore knee, they don't tend to bend the knee. So therefore, the muscles have to work really hard to keep that knee dead stiff. And it's the same with anyone that's potentially lifting in the gym. They'll have a compensatory pattern. They'll either shift their hip over, which is an adduction of one side and abduction of the other side. So they're actually loading different muscles because the joint has acted slightly different. And I think joints can be as complex as you make them, but also they can be really, really simple. What's the movement that you're looking for? What's restricted? How can I bring that movement back? Or how can I actually get that joint to work more specifically? So for example, we pretty much every single day, people come in and say, my glutes don't work. I've got glute amnesia. My glutes don't fire. How did you walk in here without a pair of glutes
You're
that work?
standing up.
First and foremost. Yeah. Yeah. What they actually mean to say, I feel, is that they're not getting the right position to recruit the glutes, or they're not strong in the position the joint's gone to recruit the glutes. So, for example, we get people doing a lot of hinge work now, and they're like, oh my God, I can feel my glutes. Well, that's pretty much what we need to try and
You're
do.
shortening and lengthening the glute muscle here. That's
Yeah,
going to happen.
yeah. And it's the working thought is like a triangle. So you've got good strength in this triangle here, but for running, you need to have a little bit of a wider triangle. So all the work in the gym, all the work we do with our strength work, all the work we're doing as a corrective exercise is to try and make your triangle just a little bit bigger, have a bigger base so that when you're running, you'll probably use 50% of it. But say you go uphill, then you've got that extra 25% on one end. Say you're going downhill, then you've got that extra 25% on the other end, rather than having one set range of motion. And I think with the hip as well, we get led down paths of, do we have this anterior pelvic tilt, do we have posterior pelvic tilt? Well, can you access both? Yes or no? If it's a yes, don't panic. If it's a no, well, let's try and access all the range of motions in that hip. And then we'll start to train in all the range of motions. So can we train an anterior tilt? Can we train a posterior tilt? Can we train a hip hitch? Can we train like in a hip rotation? So it's having all the planes covered. We'll cover all the joint itself. If you make the joint act, the muscles have got no choice but to react to that.
Good. I like that. Do you have any tips on just general joint care for running?
Yeah, load them.
Load them?
Yeah. I think the reason we say that is the cartilage within inside the joints is a bit like a sponge. It holds the synovial fluid without a compressive force going through it. It's like if you were to squash the sponge, the fluid comes out.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing with the cartilage within inside your knee, within inside your shoulder, inside your hip. It needs to be loaded to release that synovial fluid. The synovial fluid is like your engine oil. It lubricates the joints, so allows freedom of movement. But you have to probably build that up so you kind of coat the joint surface with a small part first. Then the more you move through range, you're able to coat a bigger surface, so then it feels like it's smoother. The second part of that is there's a really good study that looked at sedentary people versus recreational runners versus elite runners. So the elite runners did 100-mile weeks, the recreational runners did 40-mile weeks, and the sedentary did 0 miles per week. And the two that had the most arthritis were the elite and the sedentary. The sedentary because they weren't having enough joint force.
Extreme ends.
Was that?
The extreme ends.
Yes. Yeah, because the sedentary ones because they weren't getting enough compressive force to actually squash the synovial fluid out, and the elite because they weren't allowing the sponge to actually soak the fluid back in. So once it had been compressed, it wasn't getting that recovery time to get or to reabsorb that synovial fluid. So people always say, oh, running's bad for your knees. Unless you're running 100-mile weeks or unless you're doing nothing, then it's the research is starting to back up that you need to have some sort of stress component on the cartilage within the joints itself.
Yeah, brilliant. And then I guess everything we spoke about up till now basically covers the letter K, which is improve your knowledge.
Yeah.
Get a better vast. And I mean, knowledge nowadays is so accessible. Like you don't even have to use Google Scholar. You can podcast. There's so many really good podcasts. There's YouTube videos. People even just chatting to your neighbor who seems to be a good runner.
Everyone's got something that they can share with you, and everyone's got a niche of a little bit more knowledge than not. And I think that's why it's always important to park the ego at home and speak to people about everything, and be open enough to be challenged, and be open enough to have your mind changed as well. And I think that sometimes when you read something, it's firsthand. When you actually explain that to somebody else, it's secondhand. And when they question that, it's third hand. So you can actually start to have a deeper sense of knowledge just by reading, sharing, exploring, being challenged, either backing it up or defending it or actually saying that. So that makes a lot of sense. I've been using this kind of analogy for years, but actually it doesn't really make sense with that. It changes. And that's why in the jobs that we're in, we should always be progressing. We should always be trying to improve. And that comes with like our knowledge base, our will to want to do better for our clients, I think.
There's I don't know, you've maybe watched it, Ted Lasso. Fully recommend it. So Ted Lasso has the be curious, not judgmental.
And it's hard. It's really hard. I would hold my hand up, and I get people that come in all the time, and I'm already maybe not judging, but I'm also kind of thinking, well, what might be their errors? And I'm kind of looking at how they come in, how they look. I'm thinking that maybe it's diet, maybe it's
Yeah.
sleep deprived, maybe it's illness that's maybe their main stressor. But it's being curious about finding out why,
I
what
mean, and it's
leads them to
completely
decisions.
normal to make those assumptions, because it's the thinking fast and slow of just, that's the bias. And biases back in the sapiens days. If you hear something snarling and running at you, just run. You don't think, I wonder if that's an angry tiger, or I wonder if he's just upset he's got something in his paw. You just start running.
Yeah.
There is that biases that I think those shortcuts your brain can make. But yeah, and as a coach, it's sometimes you make the assumption, you make the bias, and then somebody will say something that'll completely throw you off. You'll be like, "Ooh, I
Think
didn't
of
see
that
that
one.
coming."
Yeah, and that's how we develop and that's how we grow, not just as like practitioners, but as humans as well.
Yeah, just as
And
people.
yeah, you learn something from people all the time, and it's so interesting. Sometimes it's like sparking a conversation with a complete stranger and find out about them. And I've learned so much through my clients just from like chatting with them. And what do you do for a job accountant? Well, tell me about your job. And it's amazing the amount of like information you can get. And you're like, oh, that's really interesting. That so knowledge is a weapon of mass destruction. And the mass destruction comes from people that don't want the knowledge.
Yeah,
If you don't want to learn, you're plateaued and you're ceilinged out. And the goal of life is to always keep on learning. You'll never know it all.
oh, Dunning-Kruger, we got there in the end.
Okay, yeah.
Dunning-Kruger. When you first start and you first get qualified, you think you know everything, and then at some point you realize you know
Don't
absolutely
know
nothing.
anything.
And then you kind of just like, okay, well, at least I know that, and I can kind of, I'm
It's that
happy.
whole oh, what is it as well? The imposter syndrome as well.
Yes,
I
yeah,
think that's a very real thing, and I think it's a quite a healthy thing to have as well.
yeah.
But always ask yourself, what if the opposite was true? What if I'm here because I've actually wanted to learn, I want to grow, and if I have a bad experience here, I'm going to learn from it, I'm going to grow from it as well. So by proxy, you're going to improve. So yeah, I think we're probably the same kind of person, but we want to be positive, but also we're very appreciative of where our boundaries are.
Yeah, yeah. All right, I'm going to throw a couple of letters at you, and we'll do some quick fire ones. So,
Yeah,
um, I mean, this one kind of long runs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do them to get better aerobically
Also,
and also mentally.
long runs are slow, right? They're
Yeah.
slower than you think.
Podcast them. Podcast, break them up into like I tend to do what I call a compass run. So I run out or drive out to Park, where the river is.
Yeah,
I do 2 miles out towards Bankree, 2 miles back, 2 miles in towards Aberdeen, 2 miles back, 2 miles over the bridge and up the southeast side road, and 2 miles back. And before you know it, 6, 8, 10, 12 miles. So you can kind of do like little bits and pieces, or you can break them up. So long runs are meant to be endured, and I think that's why you build up between the ears and I was going to say between the legs, but probably on the legs as well.
on the leg. But
Yeah,
and we're not actually we've not rehearsed this, but mental toughness, endure.
yeah.
Like that's the M part. We've not actually rehearsed this. This is just we're just there naturally. But mental
Yeah,
toughness.
I mean, when I first do an ultra run, there's a guy that gave me the David Goggins podcast, and he's like, "Listen to this; I'll really give you all you need about mental toughness." And I read, and I was like, or listened to so audiobook, and I was like, "Yeah, like I want to go and do an ultra run." And then I spoke with a sports psychologist, and he goes, "But sometimes you don't need to be shouted at. Like if you need to be shouted at to be motivated, then join the army. But
Yeah,
sometimes you might just have to find your motivation from it's like a softer way. And I think that motivation is different. It's like different songs. I don't just listen to classical music. I listen to pop, I listen to reggae. It depends what kind of mood I'm in. And it's the same with motivation. Your motivation's got to be from different parts. You might have a person that mentally inspires you. You might have a place that mentally inspires you, a song that mentally inspires you, somebody absolutely bollocking you in the ear to inspire you. It comes in different forms, but mental toughness is doing the same thing over again, failing and still getting back up and going again.
yeah. I always like I don't know if it was Goggins that said it. I think it was someone in there. Maybe it was Goggins actually. He had the reason I'm going to do better than you is I'll do the boring things for longer.
Yeah.
and you're like, fair enough. But then you realise David Goggins is an anomaly, and he's a complete outlier, and just mad. Nutrition, we've kind of already we've touched on nutrition. I think the main outcome for there is, you know, proper nutrition for proper fueling.
Yeah. Speak to a proper nutritionist.
Yeah,
Somebody's had the background in it. Yeah.
absolutely. Overtraining.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, that's quite a key one as well. It tends to follow what we've maybe talked about already, the too far, too often, too soon.
Yeah.
The way I tend to think about it is it's either overtraining or under recovering. If you're not doing the right recovery things, then you're probably going to be overtraining. If you're doing a lot of the right recovery stuff, you probably find that you don't overtrain. So it's kind of like one side of the seesaw is overtraining, the other side of the seesaw is under recovering. So look at both. Look at the parameters of your training, but also look at the parameters of your recovery: sleep, drink, eat, rest when you need to rest, that kind of thing as well. So yeah, one side of the seesaw is great to address, but you've got to try and do the other side as well.
It's and I mean, we can go back and forth on this. So for me, I use the seesaw analogy in terms of technique and intensity. So sometimes if I need to ramp up the intensity of an exercise for someone, I won't be overly fussy about flawless technique. So I'll let the seesaw rock. Is that similar to overtraining, under recovering? You want to be in certain aspects. Or are you better off to try?
The thing is, if you're over, it goes back to your analogy about Goldilocks. If you're over recovering and under training, you're not going to get that adaptation.
Yeah.
If you're overtraining and under recovering, you're going to break down. So you've kind of got to get that fine balance. On some days, you're going to find you're going to over train, so you've then got to over recover. Some days you'll under train, so you've got to under recover, and it's kind of making sure that one matches up with what the other situation is.
That was what I was kind of getting at. So like, obviously some days you will, you know, if you've got a long run or, you know, it's a fast run, you're not properly hydrated, you're not properly fueled, you know, you're going to be at that point of this is going to be tough. You've then got to counterbalance that.
Yeah.
Coming onto it.
Absolutely.
And I guess the help with all that is P, which is a plan. Get a program, get a plan, get someone you've already mentioned too, who was at Meadow. And
so I use a lady called Ginny Brand, who lives right back to me as well.
Local.
Yeah. And she writes all my programs and my running plans for me, and it's great. I look at my phone, it's there, I do it, tick the box, carry on my life. And I think that having a plan there is quite nice, because if you don't know what you're going to do and you wake up and you think, what am I going to do today? There's more risk of overtraining, there's more risk of all the too far, too fast, too soon, too often. But sometimes it's quite nice to be flexible and say, like, it's a really nice day today, I'm going to actually run a trail rather than do my session.
Yeah.
Flexibility in a plan is so important. The flexible plan based on the education of the instructor or the trainer, the coach, whatever, to change it accordingly. Because, for example, they come in and say, actually, I didn't sleep that well last night, Jase. I haven't really eaten my lunch today. I'm not really feeling up for it. And you're like, tough. On the plan today, it says you're going to do A, B, and C. So you're going to do A, B, and C. We're sensible enough to, and that's where our skill set is. It's easy to batter somebody in the gym. It's easy to batter somebody in the physio room. But the skill comes down to actually tailoring it to what the needs of that client are on that specific day. And also, how does that specific day feed into the long-term plan itself? And how do I either make up for that further down the road, or do I just say, let's just cut our losses and leave that be? So I think that's the important thing from that.
Yeah. And I mean, my bias as a coach is having a plan. I've got a coach who coaches my sessions, because otherwise I'll just do the stuff that I really like to do.
Yeah.
The stuff that I don't like to do, such as rowing and running and all that fun cardio stuff. All right, let's go quick fire again. So Q, quality over quantity. Yeah, I was making sure I read that the right way around. Quality runs better than loads and loads of runs, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're doing a session and it's meant to be 10 by 200s in such and such a time, and you get to 8 and your times are dropping off, there's no point in doing the last 2.
Yeah.
Just get the quality there. And it's the same with like in the gym. If you're meant to lift 8 reps of this weight and you get to 6 and your form is absolutely dog, then what's the point in the last two? Let's maybe pause. Can you actually accumulate it up by doing an extra set of two once you've finished, or do you just say, I'm not at that weight just yet today? So yeah, I don't think chasing the total number sometimes comes into play. It's same with like a long run. If you get to a long run and you're sore or you're achy or you've not fueled well and you have to drop it by 2 or 3 miles, learn the lesson of why you've had to drop it, i.e., get better sleep the night before, make sure you hydrate, make sure you eat, make sure you've got enough fuel with you, versus just put yourself in an overtraining situation or an injury risk by just carrying on regardless. And
Yeah.
they'll say, I'm stubborn. Don't care. The boys don't care either.
Yeah.
That's stop right there.
When I was a sprinter, my coach Trevor, he had the 5 second rule. If we were doing anything, especially I was a 100 meter sprinter, so whenever we went up further, it was always horrid. So if you were doing 200s, 300s, you had 5 seconds to be within either side. If you went out either side, you've got either gone too hard or too soft.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I'd go too hard and then I'd start to tail off, and that was it, session done.
Yeah.
And
And I think that you learn the lesson for next time is be conservative in the first one.
Yeah. Rest and recovery, we've touched on it.
Yeah.
Proper recovery. Make sure you're. Look, I'll try and link it into the show notes, but there's a super compensation calculator somewhere that lets you put your miles in and I think it's actually done in kilometers, but put your kilometers in. I think you can put your paces in, your age, your BMI, all this. You can put a lot of metrics in it, and it actually charts out where your kind of super compensation would be. I actually wear a Whoop band, which does that for me. It lets me know where my strain level is, where my stress level is, and basically where my HRV is. So if I get up in the morning, log in my stuff, it basically says, calm your beans, or hey, you're pretty good today, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, they're just information as well. I think that educated people take that information on board and they'll do something with it. Both my last two races, the D33 and my 10K out in Tenerife, both my HRV readings were in the yellow saying, do not exert yourself today. Smashed a PB for the 33 miles. So it's kind of like you've got to then take it with a pinch of salt. How am I actually feeling? Do I feel rubbish? I actually feel okay.
See,
so then, it's just a paralysis by analysis sometimes, but it's just another bit of information that you put into your what do you call it? You put it towards your evidence. You gather evidence to whether you're going to run a hard session today. Did I sleep well? Yes, I did. Do I feel good? Yes, I do. My HRV is a wee bit off. I'll maybe have a wee bit more to drink just now, just see that perks me up, or have a little bit more to eat before I go out. But it's just a bit of information, isn't it?
Yeah. It's I have a theory as to maybe not so much HRV, but especially when I'm competing, I actually like to go into the competition a little bit sore. Like I like to be fired up. Like I know, okay, so if I go in too rested, I feel sluggish.
Yeah.
I need that little bit of like almost as that central nervous system just fired up. Just we spoke a lot about sleep. It's cropped up a lot. I batter on about it. Sleep is, if you could bottle sleep up and sell it, it would be the #1 sports supplement in the world.
It would be banned. It's so good it would be banned.
It's so good it would be banned. And I feel people abuse not so much the power of sleep, but they abuse sleep in general. And it's just one of those ones where, again, this is just off the cuff type stuff, but I think people need to sleep more, but try and sleep better as well.
I think it's quite a nice point. There's two bits of it. One is like one of my old lecturers at Aberdeen Uni who did sports science said that if it works, it's probably banned. If it doesn't work, it's probably not banned. Yeah. Sleep is probably one of the things that does work and is not banned. The second thing is we're the only, I think we're mammals. Are we mammals? I presume we are. Yeah. We're the only mammal that like self-sabotages performance or life because we cut it too short. Yeah. Or we don't appreciate enough of how good a sleep pattern is or how important sleep is for performance. And we're probably too worried about having a gadget or a thing to do the recovery for us rather than just recover.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but I feel lazy if I'm sitting down. Do it.
Aye.
Do it, man. Like sleep. And if you go in a wee bit deeper into like Matthew Walker's the Power of Sleep, you go into James Nestor's The Power of Breath, and they kind of go very, very close hand in hand with it's the quality of your breathing that leads to the quality of your sleep. So, for example, if you've got any upper respiratory problems or if you've got any upper respiratory like restrictions, your quality of sleep's not great. So therefore you're going to have poorer health. So it's kind of like, can you actually improve
Yeah.
through breath work your
Yeah.
upper respiratory strength, patterning, movement? A lot of the stiffness I see in my clients because people can't breathe properly. They're apical breathers rather than actually the depth of
Yeah.
breath itself. So they're never really fully
Yeah.
either extending out the back posteriorly, their rib cage, or getting the depth into the lower lung field to recruit the diaphragm itself.
Yeah. The power of both of those, sleep and breath, is like, I mean,
And they're free. They're free, mate. You don't have to buy them. You get them.
the members will laugh at this because so what I do is I do these like trainings modules and I put them onto our hub, and one of them is how to optimize your sleep, and I show them basically how I set up for going to sleep. So I have the diffuser on, which it sets off the smells, it sets off my receptors, and then I clear my airwaves. I've got one of these. I actually got one here. So this is just a little energy go inhaler stick. This one is for literally focusing, energy focus. I've got one for sleeping. I've got one for mindset. Just different smells set off different receptors.
Yeah.
Then I've got my nose strip. I've got my
Yeah.
mouth tape. I've got my eye mask. I've got my earplugs. I've got my nice climate controlled mattress and duvet and pillow. No
And
lights.
the wife comes in, bangs the door, opens the drawers, puts the light on.
Oh, no. So Jen's got this really bad habit of wanting to be the one who says, I like to be the one who says good night last.
Yeah.
Jen sometimes will just annoy me and be like, good night. Okay, good night. I'm like, oh, I've got mouth tape on and it hurts when I try.
But then I guess like the other serious side of it is it's about routine. If you can get into a routine where you're starting to shut your body down, then the body appreciates that and it starts to shut down as well. So, for example, dim the lights a little bit more, and when you're sleeping, have the eye mask on so you're not getting any of the blue light in. And it does make sense because up until electricity was invented, we did it naturally. But now we've got like an artificial environment pretty much 24/7 if you want to. And one of the two biggest things that are high mortality is jet zones or jet lag and also shift workers. And it's because their circadian rhythms all out. And there's a great book if you ever got a chance to read called The Circadian Rhythm by the Circadian Code, sorry, by Sachin Panda.
Okay.
And he talks a lot about the body has different rhythms for different things. So, for example, after like 6 o'clock at night, your body's wanting to start healing your gut. But if you eat later on tonight, then you're potentially, it's like trying to fix a road, the potholes in the road, you're trying to fix that, but you keep driving over the top of it.
Honestly, you can't write this. So today I literally did a training and I was having a go at, not so much having a go at bodybuilders, but the eat every 2 hours thing. It annoys me because I'm like, you can't digest at all. So if you're eating every 2 hours, you're just adding more and more stress. Just have a bigger meal
Yeah.
at these bigger set times and let the body digest it. And it's similar to what you're just saying there about the potholes in the road.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's like the body needs its energy to do that. And it also releases certain hormones to do that specifically. But if you keep on eating on top of that, then the hormones get released, but then they can't really work. So
Yeah.
therefore, they're not doing their job. So then the next day, when you're starving, that's when they're trying to fix the road, but there's not the same tools to do it. So you're trying to like lay down half-arsed tar on a road, and you know it's just going to keep on breaking down. So it is a
Too much
routine.
work
I
for the
think it's
council, do you?
important. Yeah, yeah. But I think it's getting to routine because with our athletes, and you'll know yourself, you go on holiday, shit, I don't have my diffuser, I don't have my earplugs, I don't have my eye mask. Your body then's like, well, that's the routine we need to be in. So it's kind of like every so often you kind of want to make sure you get dark, you get warm, and you get into a time for getting to sleep. They're the three main things. Everything else on top of that is like additional things that
Yeah.
can
It's all
help you
about
have a comfortable sleep.
yeah, for me again, it's optimization. I've got the basics I'll do whenever I'm away, but then I've obviously got the
Yeah, yeah.
optimization stuff as well.
There's also a nice like literature current now that sleep is in 90-minute cycles. So, for example, if you normally go to bed at like say 9 o'clock is your bedtime, and
That's
then
the
for
junior
some
doctor
reason,
study. I think this did that study on junior doctors, was it?
it was an American guy I was listening to the podcast that was talking about it, but I'd probably have to go and check it for you. But he was basically saying that if your bedtime is 9 o'clock and you're trying to get to sleep at maybe quarter to 10, then you're already in a phase that's not likely that you're going to drop off. So people panic like, I'm trying to get to sleep, can't get to sleep, can't get to sleep. And then all of a sudden, at about maybe 10:30, quarter to 11, they start to feel tired again. So they spent 45 minutes fretting about getting to sleep. And then they drop off. It's because they're probably not in the right part of their cycle of going to sleep itself. And he talks about you get maybe 4 to 5 main cycles, and you can afford to miss one, but you can't afford to miss two. And I think that's the big thing itself is how many of these quality cycles can we get? And you get your REM, you get your deep sleep, you get your light sleep, then you go back in your REM, you got your deep sleep, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like if it works in a 90-minute and your routine is always 9 o'clock and you go out with your pals and it's maybe 10:30, you're
Yeah,
probably going to feel quite tired then because it's that 90-minute cycle that you've missed. But if you were to come in at 11, then it might not be until actually
yeah,
12 o'clock you get back to sleep again. So it's kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of nice information coming about sleep, but like we're going back to the top of it is you need it. It's free. Why
yeah.
don't you lap it up?
Keep it simple. Get sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. Tapering. Tapering's important.
Yeah.
You're not going to go full pilt all the way up into your actual event. You're going to have to just, I mean, like I said there, I like to be a little bit sore going into it, but that to me is just more of a keeping the cylinders firing.
Yeah. Person specific as well. Do what you've normally done. The more marathons you do, you'll probably find what taper works best for yourself. And same with any gym work as well. You know how long you take to recover after a certain workout. Don't do something stupid the next day after it. So yeah, the taper is quite an important part.
Yeah, and that is so to you understanding the body
Yeah.
very much the same. You got
Knowledge is power. Yeah. Understand how your body reacts, not understand how the body reacts at different loads and different intensities and different fueling.
yeah, brilliant. Visualization is V. I like visualization. I fully believe I passed my driving test because I never ever got to go out on a car. I only ever did the driving lessons. I didn't have like a family member take me out driving. But I would sit at the kitchen table and I pretend I was driving.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully believe that helped me pass my test. So visualization is really good. How you're going to visualize how you're starting, visualize how you're finishing, visualize the hardship, and think, okay, when I hit that hill at Balmoral, I see me at the top of it. I'm going to get there. How am I going to feel when I get to the top? I'm going to pretty chuffed, right?
Yeah. I think if you can see it, you can do it. And if you can't see it, you need to just dig a wee bit deeper.
I've got a goal setting document in our lab, and I call it the tactical, and it's about visualization, actualization, repeating.
Yeah.
Visualize, actualize, repeat. Visualize, actualize, repeat. All right, warm ups and cool downs.
Yeah.
Go for a run.
Do you know what?
Do
I
some.
think the biggest thing about warm ups and cool downs is warm up, get the heart rate up, cool down, get the heart rate down. We spoke about joint range before. If you're going to be putting the joint through a bigger range under load, make sure the joint moves through the range first and a lighter load. That'd be pretty much as far as I go with a warm up and cool down.
Keep it simple.
Yeah,
Keep it
keep
simple.
it simple, and don't think you've got to do 30 minutes of a warm up for a
30-minute run.
5K run.
Yeah.
Well, saying that, going back to the comment about Usain Bolt, 2 hour warm up for a 10-second race, Mo Farah, 20 minutes warm up for a 2 or 3 hour race. So the longer you're going for, the less likelihood you need for a warm up. The shorter, intense work probably needs a little bit of mobility and a little bit of work beforehand.
Brilliant. And then I'm just looking at the rest of them, X, Y, and Z we've kind of covered, which is cross training, stretching, and sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah. All in a nutshell,
Brilliant.
sleep and breathing,
And breathing. Yes.
hydration and eating.
Keep it simple. All right, James, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
At PhysioRun is my Instagram, and also the website is www.physiorun.net, and I work out of Spear Physiotherapy, and that is at Westhill and at the Sports Village.
Brilliant. James, thank you so much for coming on.
No
Talk.
worries.